It's all fake. That's the explosive claim coming from a former White House insider who says that Donald Trump's so called trade war with China was never really about fixing trade or helping American workers. Instead, it was a carefully staged performance, a political and financial theater designed to manipulate public perception, move stock markets, and keep Trump at the center of attention. The story began in 2018 when President Trump launched a wave of tariffs on Chinese goods. He framed it as a bold stand against unfair trade practices, claiming China was stealing American jobs and technology. Trump positioned himself as the tough negotiator who would bring factories back to the US and restore the balance of power. The headlines were dramatic: talks of escalating tensions, tariff threats, and global supply chain collapses dominated the news. Meanwhile, American farmers, manufacturers, and consumers braced themselves as prices went up, markets became volatile, and uncertainty spread. But according to this insider, the reality behind the scenes was very different. The tariffs, the threats, the tough talk, none of it was really aimed at forcing China to change. Instead, it was all about crafting an image of strength and leadership. The goal wasn't to reach a breakthrough, but to create endless headlines, fuel political support, and keep the American public distracted. This strategy even had an unofficial nickname among some White House staff: Trump always chickens out, or Taco. Every time there was a tough announcement, new tariffs, ultimatums, or threats, it was followed days later by a quiet reversal, a delay, or vague statements about progress. The cycle repeated again and again. Create fear, shake the markets, then step back just enough to ease the panic without solving anything. And here's where it gets even more revealing: the timing of these announcements. Over and over, major tariff threats or so-called breakthroughs were announced late on Friday nights or Sunday evenings, just before the stock market opened on Monday. The impact was immediate. Global markets would plunge or rally based on a single Trump tweet or statement. Investors scrambled, companies shifted their strategies, and news outlets dissected every word. For regular Americans, this meant higher prices on everything from electronics to groceries. It meant lost export markets for farmers and rising anxiety about the economy. But for others, those who understood the pattern or had inside knowledge, these wild market swings were golden opportunities to make millions. In fact, some lawmakers began questioning whether this amounted to market manipulation. Senator Adam Schiff even called for a congressional inquiry into possible insider trading linked to the timing of tariff announcements. Reports emerged of highly profitable, well-timed stock and options trades made just before key decisions were made public. While no direct evidence of criminal activity has surfaced, the pattern raised serious concerns about whether political theater was being used to enrich a select few while the broader economy suffered. What makes this story even more shocking is that, according to the insider, Trump and his team privately knew that the tariffs were unlikely to force China to cave. They knew American consumers and businesses would bear the brunt of the costs. But the show never stopped. The real audience wasn't China. It was the American public, especially Trump's political base. By keeping the trade war constantly in the headlines, Trump could claim victories even when little or nothing had changed. If the economy stumbled, he could blame China. If the market surged, he could take credit. It was a win-win narrative that gave him political flexibility and an endless supply of talking points. Of course, the US-China rivalry is real. Trade issues matter. The global economy, security, and technology all hang in the balance. But this insider account reveals a deeper truth. Not everything we see in politics is genuine. Some of the most dramatic moments are staged, not to solve real problems, but to shape public perception, dominate headlines, and sometimes even sway markets. For everyday people, the workers, business owners, and consumers, the cost of this performance was all too real. Tariffs raised the prices of daily goods, squeezed small businesses, and wiped out export markets for American farmers. The broader uncertainty weighed on investment and job growth, even as politicians continued to declare victory on television. So, what's the takeaway from this story? First, we need to look beyond the headlines. Political theater can be powerful, but it doesn't always translate into real results. Second, we live in a world where a single tweet can move billions of dollars and trigger global reactions overnight. And third, we must demand greater transparency and accountability, because when spectacle overshadows substance, it's ordinary people who end up paying the price. As the dust settles on Trump's trade war, the rivalry between the US and China continues, but next time you hear dramatic claims about tariffs, trade deals, or diplomatic showdowns, remember, not everything on the public stage is real. Real solutions require more than bold words. They require honesty, genuine negotiation, and the courage to move beyond political games. I'm Shubh, and I bring you stories that matter. Stay informed, stay curious, and keep questioning the narratives.